The stars were cold and silent when Princess First saw the smoke rising from the dead moon. Her ship, the royal cruiser Eternal Dawn, was passing through neutral space on its way to a diplomatic meeting. She stood at the observation window, her silver hair flowing behind her like moonlight on water. Her pale blue skin glowed softly in the dim light of the bridge. She was tall and beautiful, as all royalty were. Her people had ruled 12 star systems for 10,000 years. They were the oldest civilization in this part of the galaxy. They were the most powerful. They were, in their own minds, the most perfect. And they had rules, so many rules. The sacred oath of the throne was the most important of all. Every royal child swore it on their 12th birthday, remembered that day clearly. She had knelt before her father, the emperor, and spoken the ancient words. Never form bonds with lesser species. Never let emotion cloud imperial judgment. Always place the empire above self. She had been too young to understand what those words really meant. Now, at 120 years old, she understood perfectly. The oath was a cage, a beautiful, golden cage that kept her separate from the universe. "Your Highness," said her advisor, a thin-named counselor, "our sensors have detected a distress beacon on that moon." Looked at the screen. A small vessel had crashed on the surface. Smoke rose from its broken body. The ship's design was unfamiliar to her. "What species?" she asked. "Human, Your Highness." Humans had read about them. A young species from a small blue planet called Earth. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. In terms, they were bobbies, children playing with toys they did not understand. "We should continue on our path," Counselor said. "Humans are a lesser species. The oath forbids interference." He was right, the oath was clear. Lesser species were not worth attention. They were to be observed from a distance, studied perhaps, but never helped, never touched, never known. Stared at the smoke rising from the crashed ship. Somewhere in that wreckage, a living being was dying. A thinking creature with thoughts and dreams and fears. And she was supposed to fly away and let it happen. "Change course," she said. "We will investigate." Counselor's eyes went wide. "Your Highness, the oath." "I am aware of the oath." Her voice was ice. "I am also aware that I am the crown princess of the empire. I will investigate. That is my decision." No one argued with her after that. The shuttle landed on the moon's surface an hour later. Stepped out first, her royal guards behind her. The air was thin but breathable. The ground was gray and dusty. The crashed ship lay before them like a wounded animal. It was small, much smaller than vessels. The hull was torn open in several places. Burn marks covered its surface. Whatever had happened to this ship, it had happened fast and violent. "Search for survivors," commanded. Her guards spread out. She walked toward the main section of the wreckage alone. She did not know why. Something pulled her forward, something she could not name. She found him in what remained of the cargo bay. He was sitting against a broken wall, his legs stretched out before him. His suit was torn. Blood had dried on his face. His skin was brown, his hair black, his eyes dark and deep. He was holding something in his hands, a small, flat object that she did not recognize. He looked up when she entered. His eyes met hers. Had met many beings in her life. Ambassadors, warriors, kings and queens of lesser worlds. All of them had shown fear when they saw her. All of them had bowed. All of them had trembled before power. This human did none of those things. He simply looked at her. His eyes were tired, his face was calm. There was no fear in him, no worship, no trembling. "If you're going to leave," he said, "just leave. But stop staring at me like I'm already dead." Did not move. She did not speak. Something had happened inside her chest, something strange. It felt like a lock had clicked open somewhere deep within her heart. "What is your name?" she asked. His voice was rough, weak, but there was strength beneath the weakness. "Engineer, research vessel Horizon, or what's left of it." "What happened to your ship?" Wrong place, wrong time, he coughed. Two fleets were fighting over territory. We got caught in the middle. Our captain tried to run. They shot us down anyway. They didn't even know who we were, didn't care. He looked at the object in his hands, could see now that it was a photograph, a flat image showing a group of humans standing together, smiling. 12 people said, "That was my crew, my family, they're all gone now." "How did you survive?" "Our commander." His voice broke slightly on the name. "She put me in the escape pod, sealed the door before I could stop her. The reactor blew 10 seconds later." He looked up at again. "She saved my life, gave her so I could keep mine. That's who she was, that's who humans are." Did not understand. Self-sacrifice was illogical. Every knew this. You protected yourself first. You served the Empire second. You did not throw away your life for another. But this human spoke of it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You should leave," said. "I can see what you are. Royal, if I had to guess. Your kind doesn't help species like mine. I've read about your laws. I know how this works." He was right. She should leave. The oath demanded it. Her duty demanded it. 10,000 years of tradition demanded it. But looked at this broken, bleeding human who faced death without fear. She looked at the photograph of 12 smiling faces, all gone now except for him. She looked at the calm acceptance in his dark eyes. And she made a choice. "Can you walk?" she asked. He blinked. Surprise flickered across his face, the first real emotion she had seen from him. "What?" "I asked if you can walk. If not, my guards will carry you." "Why would you help me?" Did not have an answer. She did not understand her own actions. She only knew that leaving this man to die felt wrong in a way that nothing had ever felt wrong before. "Consider it scientific curiosity," she said. "Your species interests me. I wish to study you further." It was a lie. She knew it was a lie, but it was a lie she could live with. Stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his feet. He swayed but did not fall. "I can walk," he said. Turned and led him out of the wreckage. Behind them, the dead ship sat silent under the cold stars. Ahead of them, the royal cruiser waited. Counselor watched them approach with horror in his eyes. The guards whispered among themselves. A human on a royal vessel. It was unthinkable. It was forbidden. But did not care. Something had changed inside her on that dead moon. She did not know what it was yet. She did not know where it would lead. She only knew that her oath, the oath she had carried for over a century, suddenly felt heavier than it ever had before. 3 days passed on the royal cruiser Eternal Dawn. Spent most of that time in the medical bay. Doctors moved around him like ghosts, taking samples of his blood, scanning his bones, studying every part of his body with cold scientific interest. They spoke about him as if he could not hear them, as if he were an animal in a cage instead of a man. "The bone density is remarkably low," one doctor said. "A fall from a short height could break them." "The is even more concerning," another added. "Average of 80 years, some live to 100. How does a species accomplish anything meaningful in such a short time? And there is no telepathic capability at all. No natural armor, no venom, no regeneration. How has this species survived?" Listened to all of this without reaction. He had expected it. Humans were new to the galaxy. Every other species looked down on them. Every other species wondered how such weak creatures had managed to reach the stars at all. He was used to the questions. He was used to the doubt. What he was not used to was the princess. Came to the medical bay every day. She stood in the corner and watched him. She did not speak much. She simply observed, her silver eyes following his every movement. Her presence made the doctors nervous. It made curious. On the 3rd day, she finally asked her question. "How has your species survived at all?" Was sitting on the edge of his bed. His wounds were healing slowly, too slowly by standards, but normally for a human. He looked at the princess standing across the room from him. She was beautiful in a cold, distant way, like a statue made of ice and starlight. "We survived because of each other," he said. Tilted her head. "Explain." Reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph. He had carried it with him through the crash, through the rescue, through everything. The edges were bent now. There was a small tear in one corner, but the faces were still clear. 12 humans smiling at the camera. "This is my crew," he said. "The Horizon. We were a research vessel, scientists and engineers. We had been in space for 2 years when the attack happened. 2 years of living together, working together, fighting together. They were not just my colleagues, they were my family." He pointed to a woman in the center of the photo. She was tall, with short black hair and kind eyes. "This is Commander. She was our leader, the best person I have ever known." "She is the one who saved you," said. It was not a question. "Yes," his voice grew soft. "When the first missile hit, she knew we were finished. Our engines were gone. The reactor was failing. There was only one escape pod left, and it only held one person." He closed his eyes for a moment. The memories were still fresh, still painful. "I was closest to the pod. She ordered me to get in. I refused. I told her to take it instead. She was the commander. She was more important." He opened his eyes again. "She smiled at me. She said, 'You have your whole life ahead of you. Go live it for all of us.' Then she pushed me into the pod and sealed the door. I was screaming, hitting the glass, begging her to stop, but she just smiled and waved goodbye. The reactor blew 10 seconds after the pod launched." Was silent for a long time. Her face showed no emotion, but something moved behind her silver eyes, something that looked almost like confusion. "Why would she do that?" she finally asked. "Because that's what humans do for family, and my crew was my family." "But it is illogical. Self-preservation is the first instinct of all living things. She threw away her life for yours. She gained nothing from it." Looked at the princess. He saw her struggle to understand. He saw the walls she had built around herself, walls of logic and duty and ancient tradition. He saw a woman who had never known what it meant to truly love another person. "She gained everything," he said quietly. "She gained knowing that someone she loved would live. She gained knowing that our story would not end with that ship. She gained knowing that I would remember her, that I would carry her with me forever, that some part of her would keep going, even after she was gone." He held up the photograph. "This is what she gave me, not just my life, but theirs, all of them, their memories, their dreams, their hopes. I carry them now. I speak their names. I tell their stories. As long as I live, they are not truly dead." Stared at the photograph. 12 faces, 12 lives, all of them now existing only in the memory of one man. "Your species is very strange," she said. "I know," almost smiled. "We are weak. We are fragile. We live short lives and die easily, but we love fiercely. We remember forever, and we would rather die for each other than live alone." That night could not sleep. She lay in her chambers, surrounded by luxury and comfort, and stared at the ceiling. The faces from the photograph haunted her. 12 humans, 12 strangers she had never met, yet she could not stop thinking about them. She thought about Commander, a woman who had chosen death so that another might live, a woman who had smiled as the fire took her, a woman who had found peace in sacrifice. Did not think this way, protected themselves first. They served the Empire because the Empire served them. There was no sacrifice. There was no selfless love. There was only duty and power and survival. For 10,000 years this had been the way. For 10,000 years had believed it was the right way. But now, lying in the darkness, she was not so sure. She remembered her mother. The Empress had died when was young, barely 30 years old. A sickness had taken her. The doctors had tried everything, but nothing worked. In the end, she had simply faded away. Had not cried at the funeral. Crying was weakness. Emotion was weakness. She had stood beside her father and watched her mother's body burn, and she had felt nothing, because that was what was expected of her. That was what the oath demanded. But what if the oath was wrong? What if feeling nothing was not strength but emptiness? What if the humans, with their short lives and fragile bodies, had discovered something that in all their 10,000 years of glory, had missed? Did not know the answers. She only knew that something inside her was changing. Something was waking up after a very long sleep. The next morning she went to the medical bay again, was sitting by the window looking out at the stars. He turned when she entered. "Can I see the photograph again?" she asked. He handed it to her without a word. Looked at the 12 faces. She studied each one carefully. She tried to imagine who they had been, what they had dreamed, what they had loved. "Tell me about them," she said. "All of them, everything you remember." Looked at her with surprise, then understanding, then something that might have been gratitude. He began to speak. He talked for 3 hours. He told her about the pilot who sang old songs when he thought no one was listening, about the biologist who kept a small plant in her cabin and talked to it every night, about the engineer who could fix anything with tape and hope, about the doctor who stayed awake for 40 hours once to save a crew member's life. He told her about their jokes, their arguments, their dreams for the future. He told her about the way they celebrated birthdays, the way they mourned losses, the way they held each other during hard times. And listened. She listened to every word. She memorized every name. She let the stories fill the empty spaces inside her heart. When finished, he looked at her with questions in his eyes. "Why did you want to know?" Handed the photograph back to him. Her fingers brushed against his for just a moment. Human skin was warm, warmer than she had expected. "Because they deserve to be remembered," she said, "and because I have forgotten how to remember." She left the medical bay before he could respond. But as she walked back to her chambers, she realized something had changed. The oath still hung around her neck like a chain, but for the first time in her life, she had felt it loosen. Just a little. Just enough. The asteroid field came out of nowhere. One moment, the royal cruiser Eternal Dawn was gliding smoothly through space. The next moment, alarms were screaming and the ship was shaking like a leaf in a storm. Rocks the size of houses tumbled past the windows. The pilot fought with the controls, trying to navigate through the chaos. They made it through, barely, but the ship did not escape without damage. Stood on the bridge as chief engineer delivered his report. He was an old with gray skin and tired eyes. He had served on royal vessels for 300 years. He had seen everything, or so he thought. "The navigation array is destroyed, Your Highness," he said. "Without it, we cannot plot a course through hyperspace. We are stuck in normal space until repairs are complete." "How long?" asked. 30 cycles, perhaps more. The damage is extensive. We will need to rebuild entire sections from the base components." 30 cycles, nearly a full month by human measurement. His diplomatic meeting would be long over by then. The Empire would think she was dead or captured. Her father would send search parties. The political consequences would be severe. "Is there no way to speed the process?" she asked. Shook his head. "The navigation array is delicate technology. It cannot be rushed. We must follow the proper procedures, the proper protocols. That is the way." The proper way. The ancient way. The way that had not changed in thousands of years because change was dangerous, because innovation was risk, because doing things differently might mean doing things wrong. Felt frustration building inside her, but she kept her face calm. Emotion was weakness. The oath demanded control. "Begin repairs immediately," she said. "Do what you can." She left the bridge and walked to the observation deck. She needed to think. She needed to be alone. But she was not alone. Was already there, sitting in a chair by the great window. He was looking out at the asteroid field they had just passed through. His expression was thoughtful, curious. "Bad news?" he asked without turning around. The navigation array is damaged. Repairs will take 30 cycles. Finally looked at her. 30 cycles for a navigation array. Yes, why? Is that surprising to you? He stood up and walked toward her. His wounds had healed over the past week. He moved more easily now, more confidently. There was energy in his steps that had not been there before. On human ships, we can repair a navigation array in 2 or 3 days. 4 if the damage is really bad. Almost laughed. Almost. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Our systems are far more complex. They require careful, precise work. Complex doesn't always mean better, tilted his head. Can I see the damage? Now did laugh. A short, cold sound. You, a human engineer, you want to look at royal technology. I want to help. If there's any way I can make the repairs go faster, I'd like to try. You saved my life. Let me do something useful in return. She should have said no. The oath demanded it. Human hands on technology was unthinkable. It was against every protocol, every tradition, every rule. But was tired of rules. Come with me, she said. She led him down to the engineering deck. Chief Engineer looked up when they entered. His eyes went wide when he saw behind her. Your Highness, what is the meaning of this? That creature should not be here. This creature is an engineer, said. He wishes to see the damage. You will show him. But the protocols. I am giving you a new protocol. Show him. His face twisted with anger and disgust, but he obeyed. He led them to the damaged section of the ship where teams of engineers were already working. The navigation array was a massive machine, all crystal and light and flowing energy. Now it was broken, dark, silent. Stood before it for a long time. He did not speak. He did not touch anything. He just looked. The engineers whispered among themselves. Some of them laughed quietly. What could a human possibly understand about technology like this? Their species had barely discovered fire a few thousand years ago. Ignored them. He walked around the array, studying it from every angle. He knelt down and looked at the connections. He stood on his toes and examined the upper sections. He asked for a light and peered into dark corners. 6 hours passed. Waited. She did not know why. She should have returned to her duties. She should have left the human to make a fool of himself. But something kept her there. Something told her to wait. Finally straightened up, he turned to Chief Engineer. I can fix this in 2 cycles, he said. The engineering deck went silent. Every stopped what they were doing and stared at the human. His face turned dark with anger. Impossible. You do not understand our technology. You are making wild claims to impress the princess. I understand machines. His voice was calm, certain. Machines are machines no matter who builds them. Power flows in. Power flows out. Components connect. Systems communicate. The principles are the same whether the machine is or human or anything else. Then explain yourself. What would you do differently? Pointed at a section of the array. You're rebuilding this whole module from scratch, but the core is still intact. You don't need to rebuild it. You need to reroute around the damaged sections. That would violate Protocol 17. The array must function as a complete unit. Protocol 17 assumes you have unlimited time and resources. You don't. You need a solution that works now, not a solution that's perfect. Move to another section. Here, you're using standard power connections, but if you splice in the secondary power grid, that would violate Protocol 23. Protocol 23 is about preventing power fluctuations, but if you add a buffer here and here, the fluctuations cancel out. I've done it before on human ships. It works. Shook his head. These modifications violate 17 different protocols. They should not work. They cannot work. Our manuals say. Your manuals were written thousands of years ago by people who are dead now. His voice hardened. The universe doesn't care about your manuals. The universe cares about what works, and this will work. watched the exchange with growing fascination. She saw something in his eyes that she had never seen in an engineer. It was not arrogance. It was not foolishness. It was confidence. The quiet, deep confidence of someone who understood their craft completely. "Let him try," she said. Spun to face her. "Your Highness, this is madness. If he fails, the array could be damaged beyond repair. We could be stranded here forever. If he fails, you will continue with your original plan. We will lose nothing but 2 cycles." Met's eyes. "But I do not think he will fail." She did not know why she believed in him. She only knew that she did. Worked through the night and into the next day. He did not sleep. He barely ate. He asked for tools that they had never heard of, then built them himself from spare parts. He spliced systems that were never meant to be spliced. He rerouted power through pathways that the manuals said were impossible. He used materials in ways that made the engineers gasp with shock. And slowly, the navigation array began to come back to life. Light flickered in the crystal core. Energy hummed through the connections. Displays that had been dark for days suddenly glowed with data. At the end of the second cycle, stepped back from the machine. His hands were black with grease. His eyes were red with exhaustion, but he was smiling. "Done," he said. Ran a diagnostic, then another, then a third because he could not believe the results. "This is unprecedented," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The array is functioning at 93% capacity, better than some new units." 93 is enough to get us where we need to go," said. The engineers stared at him, some with anger, some with confusion, some with something that looked almost like respect. Turn 2, "Your Highness, these modifications violate 17 established protocols. They should not work." "But they do work." Really looked at him. This human with his grease-stained hands and tired eyes. This man from a young, primitive species. This person who had done in 2 cycles what could not do in 30. "Protocols are guidelines," said, echoing his words from before. "Problems are problems. You solve them however you can." He turned and walked out of the engineering deck. He needed sleep. He needed food. He needed rest. Watched him go, and she wondered. For 10,000 years had perfected their technology. They had written protocols and procedures and manuals. They had built walls of tradition around every system, every process, every way of doing things. And in one day, one human had improved their work by ignoring everything they believed. What else had they gotten wrong? What else could be better? What else was possible if only they had the courage to try? Did not know the answers, but for the first time in her life she wanted to find out. The oath still bound her, the chains were still there. But they felt a little lighter now. The message arrived in the middle of the night. Was asleep when the alarms woke her. She dressed quickly and hurried to the bridge where her officers were already gathered around the main display. Their faces were grim. Their eyes were hard. "What has happened?" she demanded. Counselor stepped forward. "Your Highness, there has been an attack. An outpost on the planet has been struck by insurgents. 50 of our soldiers are dead. The attackers were from the local population, the species." Felt her blood go cold. They were a subjugated species. They had lived under rule for 800 years. They had never caused trouble before. They had always been quiet, obedient, broken. "Show me the report," she said. The display lit up with images and data. The outpost had been a military supply station. The attackers had struck at dawn when the guards were changing shifts. They had used primitive weapons, knives and clubs and rocks. Against armor and energy weapons, they should have been slaughtered in seconds. But they had not tried to win. They had tried to die. They had thrown themselves at the walls. They had climbed over each other's bodies. They had kept coming even as they were cut down, wave after wave, until finally their numbers overwhelmed the defenders. 50 soldiers had died. Over 300 lay dead around them. It was not a battle. It was a suicide attack, a message written in blood. "This is unacceptable," said Fleet Commander. He was a tall with scars on his face from 100 battles. "The must be punished. Standard protocol demands we destroy their largest city in response. 50 soldiers for 50,000 rebels. That is the ratio. That has always been the ratio." The other officers nodded. This was the way. For 3,000 years they had responded to rebellion with overwhelming force. It worked. It always worked. After watching their cities burn, no species ever rebelled again. Looked at the display. She saw the bodies of her soldiers. She saw the bodies of she saw the numbers, 50 for 50,000. Something inside her felt sick. "Prepare the strike," Commander said. "We can launch within the hour." "Wait." The voice came from behind. She turned and saw standing at the entrance to the bridge. He must have heard the alarms. He must have come to see what was happening. The officers stared at him with shock and anger. A human on the bridge during a military crisis. It was unthinkable. "Remove this creature," Commander ordered. "No," his voice cut through the room like a blade. "Let him speak." "Your Highness." "I said let him speak." The bridge fell silent. Every eye turned too. He walked forward slowly, his gaze fixed on the display. "You're about to kill 50,000 people because 50 soldiers died," he said. "Have you asked why they attacked?" Commander's face twisted with contempt. "Why does not matter? They attacked, they killed, they must be punished." "But don't you want to know what made them do it? Don't you want to understand?" "There is nothing to understand. They are rebels, they are animals, they deserve death." Shook his head. "On Earth we had centuries of the same cycle. Attack, retaliate, attack again. Empires rose and fell. Millions died. Nothing ever changed. The wars went on until everyone was too tired to remember why they were fighting." "Your Earth is a primitive world," Counselor sneered. "Your species knows nothing of true power." "Maybe, but we learned something that you haven't looked at. The cycle only ended when someone was brave enough to listen first, when someone asked why instead of reaching for a weapon, when someone chose to understand instead of punish." "Nonsense," Commander said. "Strength is the only language that lesser species understand." "Then why do they keep rebelling? 800 years under your rule, and they still chose to die fighting you. That doesn't sound like understanding to me. That sounds like hatred so deep that death was better than living under your boot." The bridge was silent. No one knew what to say. No one had ever spoken to like this. Looked at the display again. 300 had thrown themselves at her soldiers with nothing but primitive weapons. They had known they would die. They had gone anyway. Why? The oath told her not to ask. The oath told her that lesser species did not deserve understanding. The oath told her to launch the strike and burn their city and move on. But the oath had been wrong before. "Open a communication channel," she said. "Contact I wish to speak with them." The bridge erupted in protest. Commander stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Your Highness, this is madness. We do not negotiate with rebels, we crush them. That is the way. That has always been the way. Perhaps it is time for a new way." Sat down in the command chair. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She was about to do something that no had done in 3,000 years. She was about to listen. The communication channel opened. A face appeared on the display, an elder, his skin pale and wrinkled, his eyes filled with fear and defiance. "I am Princess of the Empire," she said. "I wish to understand why your people attacked our outpost. I wish to hear your reasons." The elder stared at her. Shock crossed his face, then suspicion, then slowly something that might have been hope. "You wish to hear us?" His voice was rough, broken. "In 800 years no has ever asked to hear us. I am asking now." The elder was silent for a long moment. Then he began to speak. He told her about the taxes. for centuries had demanded tribute from the food, minerals, labor. The amounts had grown every year. At first they could pay, then they struggled, then they starved. He told her about the children. Last winter, hundreds of young had died because there was not enough food. Their parents had begged the governor for help. He had laughed and demanded more tribute. He told her about the choice. The elders had gathered in secret. They had decided that death in battle was better than watching their children starve. They had known they could not win. They had simply wanted to be heard, to make them notice them, even if only for a moment. "We expected you to destroy us," the elder said. "We expected death. We had made peace with it. We only wanted someone to know why, to know that we were not animals, that we had reasons, that we were people." Listen to every word. She felt something breaking inside her chest, something she had not known was there. Shame. For 800 years, her people had ruled For 800 years, they had taken and taken and taken. They had never once asked if the taking was just. They had never once looked at the people beneath them and seen anything but resources to be used. "Your Highness," Commander said quietly, "the strike force is ready. Give the order." Looked at the elder on the screen. She saw his tired eyes. She saw his thin face. She saw the weight of 800 years pressing down on his shoulders. She thought about the oath, about tradition, about the way. Then she thought about Commander, who had given her life for love, about 12 humans who had died together because they were family. She made her choice. "There will be no strike," she said. "Instead, we will negotiate. The tribute system will be reviewed. Food supplies will be sent to immediately. They will be treated as partners, not as property." The bridge was silent with shock. Commander stared at her like she had gone mad. "Your Highness, this is against all protocol. This is against the oath. This is mercy," stood up. "This is justice. This is what we should have done centuries ago." She looked at the elder on the screen. His eyes were filled with tears. He was trembling. "You will truly do this," he whispered. "You will truly hear us." "Yes," his voice was firm. "You have suffered enough. It is time for something new." The communication ended. The bridge remained silent. Turned and walked toward the door. Her officers watched her go. Their faces showed many things: confusion, anger, fear, and in some eyes, something that might have been respect. Was waiting outside. He looked at her with questions in his eyes. "You did it," he said. "You listened." "I did," felt exhausted, but she also felt lighter than she had in years. "I do not know what will happen now. I have broken every protocol. My father will be furious. The Empire may never forgive me." "Maybe, or maybe you just showed them a better way." Smiled. It was a small smile, tired and uncertain, but it was real. "Thank you," she said, "for reminding me that there was another option." Shook his head. "I just asked a question. You made the choice. That took courage, real courage." They stood together in the corridor, two beings from different worlds, different species, different lives. But in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. Something had changed, something had shifted. The oath was cracking, the walls were falling. And did not know whether to be terrified or grateful. Weeks passed on the royal cruiser. The diplomatic meeting had been rescheduled. Messages had been sent to the emperor explaining the delays. The crisis had been resolved, at least for now. Life on the ship settled into a quiet rhythm, and found herself seeking company more and more. It started with small things: a question about human history during dinner, a walk along the observation deck after her duties were finished, a conversation that stretched late into the night cycle. She told herself it was curiosity. She told herself she was studying him, learning about his species, gathering information for the Empire. But she knew these were lies. The truth was simpler. The truth was that she enjoyed being with him, that his presence made her feel something she had never felt before, that when he smiled, something warm spread through her chest, that when he was gone, she counted the hours until she saw him again. It was strange, it was frightening, it was wonderful. One night they sat together on the observation deck. The stars drifted past the window like snow falling in slow motion. The ship hummed quietly around them. They were alone. "Tell me about Earth," said. "Tell me everything." "Laugh softly, everything that would take years." "Then tell me what you love about it." He thought for a moment, then he began to speak. He told her about the oceans, vast bodies of water that covered most of the planet. He described the way sunlight sparkled on the waves, the sound of the tide coming in at night, the smell of salt in the air. He told her about the mountains, great towers of rock and ice that touched the sky. He had climbed one once when he was young. It had taken 3 days. At the top, he had stood above the clouds and watched the sun set over a sea of white. He told her about the cities, millions of humans living together in towers of glass and steel, the noise and the chaos and the energy of it all, the way strangers would help each other during storms or disasters, the way music would spill out of windows on warm summer nights. He told her about the wars, the terrible, bloody wars that had nearly destroyed them, the weapons they had built, the horrors they had committed, the long, painful process of learning to be better. "We are not a perfect species," he said. "We have done terrible things. We have hurt each other in ways I cannot describe, but we have also loved. We have created art and music and stories that will last forever. We have reached the stars even though everything said we were too weak, too fragile, too short-lived to make it." He looked at her with those dark, deep eyes. "That is what I love about Earth. Not that we are great, but that we keep trying to be." Listen to every word. She felt them settle into her heart like seeds taking root. "What about you?" asked. "What do you love about your world?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. She was a princess. She was expected to love the empire. She was expected to serve without question. But what did she truly love? She searched her memories. She looked for something real, something true, something that was hers alone. "My mother," she said finally. "I loved my mother." The words surprised her. She had not spoken of her mother in decades. The memory was old and faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. "She died when I was young," continued. "Just 30 years old, a child by standards. The sickness took her slowly. I watched her fade away day by day. I'm sorry. The oath told me not to grieve. Emotion is weakness. Attachment is dangerous. I stood at her funeral and felt nothing because that was what was expected of me." His voice grew soft. "But late at night, when no one was watching, I would go to her garden. She had loved flowers, strange, delicate things that needed constant care. I would sit among them and pretend she was still there." She had never told anyone this. Not her father, not her advisors, not anyone. The words felt strange on her tongue, but also right. "What happened to the garden?" asked. "It died. After she was gone, no one cared for it. The flowers withered. The plants turned to dust. I watched it happen and did nothing because the oath said I should not care." Tears formed in her silver eyes. She did not know where they came from. She had not cried in decades. "But I did care," she whispered. "I cared so much that it hurt, and I have been pretending not to care ever since, about anything, about anyone." Reached out and took her hand. His skin was warm against hers, alive, real. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said. Looked at him, this human, this fragile, short-lived, impossible human who had crashed into her life and turned everything upside down. "You're not what I expected," she said. "Neither are you," he smiled. "They told us we're cold, heartless, machines in the shape of people, but you saved my life. You listened to those insurgents. You're not heartless, you're just trapped." Trapped, yes. That was exactly how she felt. Trapped in a cage of duty and tradition and ancient oaths. Trapped in a role she had never chosen. Trapped in a life that had never truly been her own. What if I don't want to be trapped anymore? She asked. Then don't be. It's not that simple, the oath. The oath is words spoken by a child who didn't understand what they meant. You're not that child anymore. You can choose who you want to be. Shook her head. You don't understand, the oath is everything. It is the foundation of my claim to the throne. If I break it, I lose everything. My title, my power, my place in the empire. Would that be so bad? The question hung in the air between them. It was a dangerous question, a forbidden question, a question she had never allowed herself to ask. Would it be so bad? To give up the throne, to walk away from the empire, to be free for the first time in her life. To be with him. She realized with growing horror and growing joy that she cared for him, not as a specimen, not as a curiosity, not as a tool for the empire. As a person, as an equal, as something more. The oath forbade this. The sacred oath of the throne, sworn on her ancestors' graves, sealed in her blood. To form a bond with a lesser species was the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate failure, the ultimate sin. But looking at, she could no longer see a lesser being. She saw someone who had taught her more about strength, compassion, and wisdom than 10,000 years of tradition. She saw someone who faced death without fear and loved without conditions. She saw someone who made her want to be better. I don't know what to do, she said. I don't know who I am anymore. Squeezed her hand. You don't have to know right now. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just know that whatever you choose, you won't be alone. I'll be here for as long as you want me. They sat together in silence, watching the stars drift past, her hand in his, her heart beating against the chains of her oath. She did not know what the future held. She did not know what choices she would have to make. She only knew that something had changed inside her. Something irreversible. Something beautiful. Something terrifying. For the first time in her life, Princess was falling in love. And love, she was learning, was stronger than any oath. The rose from the darkness like a jewel made of light. Stood at the observation window as the royal cruiser descended toward the capital. Below her spread the most beautiful planet in the galaxy, silver cities rising into purple skies, crystal towers catching the light of 3 suns, gardens that stretched for thousands of miles. This was her home. This was her birthright. This was everything she had been raised to protect. And she was about to lose it all. The journey had taken longer than expected, but now it was over. Her coronation was scheduled for the next day. She would become Empress of 12 star systems. She would rule billions of beings across the galaxy. But first, she had to face her father. Emperor was dying. The sickness had been eating away at him for years. His body was failing. His time was running out. He had held on only long enough to see his daughter take the throne. He received her in his private chambers, a vast room of white stone and golden light. He lay on a bed of crystal, his skin pale and thin, his eyes sunken but still sharp, still watching, still seeing everything. Knelt before him, waited outside with the guards. She had told him to stay there. She had told him this was something she needed to do alone. Father, she said, I have returned. The emperor studied her for a long moment. His gaze moved across her face, searching, probing, peeling away her masks one by one. You have changed, he said. His voice was a whisper now, a shadow of what it once was. Something is different about you. The journey was long. Many things happened. Yes, I have read the reports, the incident, the negotiation. His lip curled with contempt. Mercy to lesser species, that is not the way. Perhaps it should be. The emperor's eyes narrowed. Dangerous words. Be careful, daughter. The court is watching. The nobles are watching. Any sign of weakness will destroy you before you even begin. Is compassion weakness, father? Is justice weakness? When dealing with lesser beings, yes. He coughed, a terrible, wet sound that shook his whole body. They do not understand kindness. They understand only power. Give them mercy and they will see it as an invitation to rebellion. Said nothing. She had argued this point in her own mind 1,000 times. She was tired of arguing. The Emperor fell silent. His eyes studied her again, and slowly his expression changed. The contempt faded. Something else took its place, something that looked almost like fear. "There is more," he said. More than mercy and justice. Something else has happened to you." Felt her heart stop. She tried to keep her face calm. She tried to hide what she was feeling. But her father had ruled for 500 years. He had survived plots and wars and betrayals that would have destroyed lesser beings. He knew how to read faces. He knew how to find truth. "You have broken the oath," he said. "I see it in your eyes. You have formed a bond with someone, with that creature, the human." The word hung in the air between them. The accusation, the truth. Did not deny it. She was tired of lying. "His name is," she said, "and he is not a creature. He is a man, a good man, better than most I have known." The Emperor closed his eyes. For a moment he looked older than his 1,000 years, older and more tired than she had ever seen him. "Foolish child," he whispered, "do you understand what you have done? Do you understand what this means?" "I understand that I have fallen in love. I understand that this love has made me a better person. I understand that the oath was wrong. The oath has protected our empire for 10,000 years. The oath has isolated us for 10,000 years. It has made us cold and cruel and blind. We rule the galaxy, but we know nothing about it. We have power, but no wisdom. We have strength, but no heart." The Emperor opened his eyes. They burned with anger, with disappointment, with grief. "Then you are unfit for the throne." The words cut through like a blade. She had expected them. She had known they would come, but they still hurt more than she had imagined. "I know," she said quietly. The coronation chamber was vast. Thousands of nobles had gathered from across the 12 systems. They wore robes of silk and jewels of crystal. They whispered among themselves, eager to witness the crowning of a new empress. The throne sat at the center of the chamber, a massive chair of carved stone and flowing light. It had been built 10,000 years ago by the first emperor. Every ruler since had sat upon it. Today was supposed to take her place there. But when she entered the chamber, she was not alone. Walked beside her. He wore simple clothes, the same clothes he had worn when she found him in the wreckage. His hands were still marked with grease from his work in engineering. He looked completely out of place among the glittering nobles. He had never looked more beautiful to her. The court erupted in whispers. The nobles stared at the human with shock and disgust. Guards moved forward, hands on their weapons. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded High Counselor, the leader of the noble court. "Why is this creature in the sacred chamber?" Stopped at the center of the room, she looked at the faces around her. Thousands of all watching, all waiting. "He is here because I asked him to be here," she said. "He is here because he deserves to be here. And he is here because I need to tell you all the truth." The chamber fell silent, every eye fixed on her. "I have broken the sacred oath of the throne," said. Her voice was clear and strong. "I have formed a bond with this human, not because he is a tool or a specimen or a curiosity, but because he is the finest person I have ever known, because he has shown me what I've forgotten, because I love him." The silence shattered into chaos. Nobles shouted in anger. Guards drew weapons. Some called for her exile. Others called for her execution. High Counselor raised his hand for silence. His face was a mask of cold fury. "You admit to this crime. You admit to breaking the oath sworn by your ancestors." "It is not a crime to love," said. "And the oath of my ancestors was not mine. I spoke words I did not understand. I made promises I never truly believed. The oath has been a prison, not a guide." "Then you are unfit for the throne. The law is clear. You must renounce this creature or face exile." Looked at, he stood quietly beside her, surrounded by enemies facing death. His face was calm. His eyes were steady. He was not afraid. He had never been afraid. She thought about the 12 faces in his photograph, about Commander, who had given everything for love, about the who had died fighting for their children, about the garden of flowers that had withered because no one cared enough to save them. She reached up and removed the ceremonial pendant from her neck, the symbol of her claim to the throne. The metal was cold in her hands, heavy. It had weighed her down her entire life. "The oath demands I place empire above self," she said. "But what is an empire that crushes wisdom because it comes from an unexpected source? What is tradition that forbids growth? What is power without compassion?" She held the pendant up for all to see. "I do not break my oath. I transcend it. The oath was meant to protect the empire from weakness, but refusing to learn, refusing to change, that is the true weakness. This human has shown me what I've forgotten. That strength lies not in domination but in connection. That true power comes from love, not fear." She dropped the pendant at her father's feet. It rang against the stone floor like a bell, announcing the end of an age. "If the empire cannot accept that truth," she said, "then the empire does not deserve my service." The chamber erupted again. Guards moved toward and both, weapons charged with deadly light. But did not flinch. She took his hand and held it tight. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The guards surrounded them. Weapons hummed with power. The nobles watched with hungry eyes, waiting for blood. High Counselor stepped forward, his robes flowing like shadows around him. "By the laws of the empire, you are both sentenced to death. The human for corrupting a royal bloodline, the princess for betraying her oath. Do you have any final words?" Raised her chin. "I have said what needed to be said. I regret nothing." "Then you will die as you lived, a fool." The guards raised their weapons. His hand tightened around. This was the end. They had known it might come to this. They had accepted it. But they were not alone. "Stop!" The voice came from the back of the chamber. Every head turned. Every eye went wide with shock. A delegation had entered the sacred chamber. 10 of them, dressed in simple robes, their pale faces marked with the signs of hunger and hardship. They walked forward through the crowd of nobles, ignoring the weapons pointed at them. At their head was the elder had spoken to during the crisis. His name was. He had traveled across the stars to be here. "What is this?" High Counselor demanded. "Remove these creatures at once." "We will not be removed." His voice was quiet but firm. "We have come to speak for Princess. We have come to tell you what she did for our people." "You have no right to speak in this chamber. You are a subjugated species. You are nothing." "We are nothing because you made us nothing." Looked at the nobles around him. "For 800 years you have taken everything from us, our food, our labor, our dignity. We were dying. Our children were starving. We had lost all hope." He pointed at, "This woman gave us hope again. She listened when no one else would listen. She showed mercy when your laws demanded cruelty. She treated us like people instead of animals. Because of her, our children will live." Another voice spoke up. This one came from among the nobles themselves. "I also stand for the princess." The crowd parted. A young noble stepped forward. Her name was Sira. She was barely 200 years old, young by standards. Her eyes burned with determination. "I have watched our empire for my whole life," Sira said. "I have seen the wars, the cruelty, the endless cycle of domination and rebellion. I have asked myself, is this really the best we can do? Is this really what 10,000 years of civilization looks like?" She walked to stand beside. "Princess has shown us another way, a better way. I choose to follow her." Another noble joined them, then another, then a dozen more. They came forward one by one, stepping away from the crowd and standing with young and old, male and female, nobles who had grown tired of endless war, officers who had seen too much death. citizens who believed there had to be something better. Even some of the guards lowered their weapons. They looked at each other with uncertain eyes. The old ways were crumbling. Something new was being born. High Counselor watched with horror as his court fell apart around him. "This is treason. All of you are traitors." "No," the voice was weak but unmistakable. Everyone turned. Emperor stood in the doorway of the chamber. His body was frail. His hands were trembling, but he had dragged himself from his deathbed to be here. Two servants held him up. He looked like a ghost, a shadow of the great ruler he had once been. But his eyes were clear, and in them saw something she had never expected to see. Understanding. "Father," she whispered, "you should not be here, your body." "My body is dying." The emperor walked forward slowly, each step an effort. "I have days left, perhaps hours, but before I go I must do one last thing." He stopped before his daughter. He looked at her face. He looked at the human standing beside her. He looked at the nobles who had chosen to follow her. "I have ruled this empire for 500 years, he said. "I have done terrible things in the name of tradition. I have crushed rebellions. I have destroyed worlds. I have followed the oath without question because that was what I was taught to do." He coughed, blood flecked his lips, but he continued speaking. "I always believed I was strong. I believed our ways were right. I believed lesser species needed to be controlled." He shook his head slowly. "I was wrong." The chamber was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. "My daughter has shown me something today. She has shown me that true strength is not about power. It is about courage. The courage to change. The courage to admit mistakes. The courage to love when love is forbidden." He reached out and took his hand. His grip was weak but warm. "I have failed you," he said to her. "I made you swear an oath that should never have existed. I tried to make you cold and hard like me, but you became something better, something I could never be." Tears rolled down his face. "Father." "Let her live." The emperor turned to face the court. "Let them both live. Perhaps it is time for something new. Perhaps it is time for the old ways to end." He stumbled. The servants caught him. His strength was fading fast. "My last command as emperor," he whispered. "There will be no execution. There will be no exile. Let my daughter choose her own path. Let the empire find its own future." He looked at one more time. A small smile crossed his dying face. "Make it better than it was," he said. "Make it worthy of the love you have found." His eyes closed. His body went limp. Emperor, ruler of 12 star systems, died with his hand in his daughter's grip. 3 years later, the galaxy was a different place. The empire no longer existed. In its place stood the Galactic Federation, a union of dozens of species working together as equals. There were no subjugated peoples. There were no lesser beings. Every voice mattered. It had not been easy. There had been resistance. Some nobles had refused to accept the new order. Some species had been suspicious after centuries of oppression. Building trust had taken time and patience and countless difficult conversations. But it had worked. Served as the first chancellor of the Federation. She had been elected, not crowned. The people had chosen her because of what she represented, not power but hope, not domination but connection. Stood beside her as ambassador. He was the bridge between humanity and the stars. He traveled to dozens of worlds, meeting new species, building relationships, showing everyone that the galaxy could be united by friendship instead of fear. They lived together in a small house by a garden, had planted flowers there, the same kinds her mother had loved. She cared for them every morning before her work began. One evening, they sat together watching the sunset over the crystal towers of the capital. The sky was purple and gold. The air was warm and sweet. "Do you ever regret it?" asked. "Giving up the throne, giving up the empire?" Thought about the question. She remembered the weight of the ceremonial pendant, the chains of the oath, the cold loneliness of being a princess. "No," she said, "I gave up power, I gained something better." "What?" She took his hand. His skin was still warm, still alive, still wonderful. "Everything," she said. They sat together in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different lives, but bound together by something stronger than any oath. Love. And when beings across the galaxy asked how such a transformation had been possible, how an ancient empire had become a federation of equals, how enemies had become friends, how the impossible had become real, the answer was always the same. A single human showed a princess that the strongest oaths are not the ones we inherit, they are the ones we choose. And she chose to love. That made all the difference.